Ready? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this time at Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'd like to take a moment to ask the people in the sanctuary to silence your phones first. Thank you. And whether you are in this beautiful sanctuary reaching for your phone, or at home in Jefferson County or other places beyond, we welcome you. Whether you're watching live, watching the recording, we welcome you. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, and whatever your faith tradition, we are glad to be here in community with you. My name is Kathy Stevenson, and I'm a member here at Quimper UU Fellowship. We begin each service with our land acknowledgement, which is an act of remembering, an act of repair, an act of accountability, and an act of atonement. We acknowledge that these waters, mountains, valleys, and shorelines that we inhabit are the traditional territory of the S'Klallam and Chimicum peoples. We honor these indigenous people in history and those with us today and strive to counter the harm done due to colonization. We also acknowledge that our colonial legacy was built by the Chinese and other immigrants. I will now ring the chime to assist us in settling our minds and calming our hearts. With settled minds and calm hearts, we now rejoice together with a joyful noise who will lead us in our call to community. Please stand as you are willing and able here in the sanctuary or at home to join us in hymn number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
Do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing, Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance, oh Lord. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you got to laugh, Lord. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 Shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout.
Please join me now in our chalice lighting words, a poem called The Forest for the Trees by Raina Priest, our Washington State Poet Laureate and a member of the Lumi Nation. When we speak, whether we agree, the trees will turn the breath of our words from carbon dioxide back into air. Give us new breath for new words, new chances to listen, new chances to be heard. Our opening words are by Hope Johnson from the meditation book called Voices from the Margins. One love. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits. Here, not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing. Getting to know each other. Taking risks. Opening up. Questioning, seeking, searching. Trying to understand. Struggling. Making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves. Thank you.
This is a call and response. On the chancel wall, you will see your words. I will start, you will finish. And our words today were written by one of our own QUUF members, the Reverend Dr. Tony Vincent. It is in our hymnal, number 732. If the words don't happen to appear, just check your gray hymnal, number 732, and there they are. Thank you, Tony. This is for Martin Luther King, Jr. Great Spirit of light and darkness.
We gather once again to remember fallen friend and nourish ourselves from the fountain of reflections.
Open our hearts to the anguish of our pain, to the tired taste of swallowing tears, and to our unrealized vision.
In this place, we bring our scattered lives together, groping for meaning and looking for truth.
Be with us as we continue our search for understanding of the mystery of the temporal.
Stay with us as we wander through our memories, seeking pathways to the future.
Move with us as we unravel the implied imperatives of hopes unfulfilled.
Justice makes tireless hands, and we grow weary.
As we touch one another in common cause and with the Great Spirit in our midst.
Let us find the way and the courage to realize the dream which still lives within us. Amen.
Thank you. You did very well. Tony would be proud of us, I'm sure. And now, Bo, come on up. He is our Director of Family Ministries.
Good morning, everyone. Today in our earliest RE class, we are exploring the sense of taste and trying all sorts of goodies. And then in our middle elementary class, we are doing our second lesson on Islam, studying the 5 pillars. And then in our middle school grades, we are preparing for our trip to the Tahoma Monastery next week and going through right mindfulness and other pathways to Buddhism. So those of you who are on the aisle, if you would please rise in body or spirit and form an arch for our children, that would be fantastic. And then we will sing them to their classes.
I think we just go.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere.
Teachers who are accompanying the children in their classrooms. We are always pleased when people find their way to our Sunday morning services. We like to acknowledge and welcome you. If you're online with us, you're invited to say hello in the chat and tell us your name and where you're from. If you're attending here in the sanctuary, we invite you to rise as able or simply raise your hand so we may greet you. Any visitors today? Welcome, welcome, all of you. Our newcomer table is to the right of the sanctuary exit, where you'll find greeters. There's a side banner that says welcome, and there'll be greeters there after the service if you have any questions or just want any someone to chat with about this place. And then the room right beyond that is the fellowship hall, where there is tea and coffee served. We appreciate your presence among us. This is the time in our service when we receive the offering. 3 times a month, our offering is passed on to a local nonprofit organization that represents our values here in Jefferson County. However, the support of QUUF is also vital to our existence, so this morning the offering goes to support this religious community. If you'd like to donate to this cause, please, the ushers will come among you in the sanctuary to receive your offering. For those viewing online, text the amount you'd like to give to the number at the bottom of the screen, or go to our website, QUF.org, and click on the link Giving, or simply mail a check to QUF. Just make sure you put offering in the memo line. And we will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to A Joyful Noise perform Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changing.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your tongue
Some songs are truly ageless. That was wonderful. Thank you. All right. Today, I have a couple of announcements to make. Today is the first day of our ALPS, or Adult Learning Program, sign-ups for this rest of this winter and spring. There in the sanctuary, there are flyers with the information on it, and on our website, the information to the brochure, the description of the classes and offerings, and also Sign Up Genius, which is how we sign up for these. Hopefully there's some information also if you don't know how to use Sign Up Genius, the phone number that you can call. Our classes range this semester from the poetry of Gregory Orr, dances of universal peace, a tour of our city's new drinking water plant, book discussions on race and multicultural UU congregations, among others like laughter yoga. Public sign-ups begin next week, so sign up this week if you're a member or affiliated friend, and then pass the information on to your friends to sign up after that. The week of February 6th is our second week of providing meals for the winter shelter downtown at the American Legion. And we have dinner makers for all the nights except Monday the 6th and Tuesday the 7th. So the update has information on how to sign up for that. And now we will enjoy our joys and sorrows. We share joys and sorrows, recognizing that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community of life. And thus, we place this first stone, thinking in particular of Black lives in our country. May we look to a day when U.S. policies and practices and hearts truly, truly tell all that Black lives matter. And now for candles. We light this first candle for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's his 94th birthday today, January 15th. And this next candle is for QUF member Barb Dyer. We wish her have best wishes for her upcoming knee surgery on the 17th. If you would like to be part of a meal train for her, contact Carol Graves. We are with you, Barb. And now we place this final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, but also thinking of joys and sorrows among all of us that are unexpressed, but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence.
His activism, community work started in inner city schools, King County Juvenile Detention Center, New Horizons in Seattle. He became heavily involved in social justice marches and meetings between the Black church and the city officials in Kitsap County. He is now a restorative practitioner and mediator working to bring peace where many tensions lie. He majors in organizational leadership, targeting his focus on leading organizations and people through change. Darrell serves as the Director of Wellness for the Port Townsend School District. He lives in Silverdale with his wife and 3 children.
Thank you. Thank you all for being welcoming today. So first, I'm going to start with our reading. In today's reading, I chose a quote that I use quite often from Chief Seattle, also known as Chief Seattle. And Chief Seattle said, "The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he also does to himself." That's our reading for today.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd a hammer of danger, I'd a hammer of warning, I'd a hammer of love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And if I had a bell,
Good morning, Quimper Fellowship. How y'all feeling today? Is everybody really feeling good today? I don't know, some people may be tired, some people may be hangry, some people probably didn't get enough rest last night, got a flat tire or something. We're all feeling different emotions right now, and just the authenticity of us being here together is very important. For me, in my position, I'm in a position where I'm speaking in front of a lot of people I haven't met before. and it can be nerve-wracking at times. I'm also speaking in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, who was one of my favorite heroes, inspirations, who spoke of the concept of justice. And so we actually have a slideshow. Let me see, I pressed this button. Gotcha. I don't know where it's aiming at. I forgot to ask you that question. Gotcha. Let me see if I'm doing this right. I may be, oh, okay, gotcha. I think that's it, right? Yeah, it's all right, y'all. We're good. It's not a public health crisis, all right? We'll be all right. It'll get going here in a second. But today, we're honoring Dr. Martin Luther King. And today, we're going to talk about what is justice. We're going to dive deep into what is justice and what does that actually look like? How do we achieve it? Because justice, oh, there it is. Justice is a part of your fellowship's vision, mission, covenant. So looking at what justice is very important. So today we're going to talk about what is justice. All right, I'm aiming here, right? There we go. So, Dr. King, he was an amazing man. He was also human. He had a lot of flaws, imperfections, like everyone in this room today. However, his passion, his persistence, his determination to obtain equal rights for all citizens is worthy of honor, which is why we continue to honor him today. So to start us off, just even with the energy and the power of the civil rights movement that was really channeled through the church, the black church and the Negro spirituals. I just always reminded of just like the hope, that the church would give the black people, and when they would sing songs together and during times of slavery, when they would come together searching for hope and meaning in life. And that power actually powered the civil rights movement. So we're going to practice something that we do in the black church today. So I'm going to need your participation, all right? So I need you to turn to your neighbor. That's the person next to you. And repeat after me. Say, neighbor. Today we're going to celebrate freedom. Say, neighbor. Today we're going to celebrate justice. Say, neighbor. Today we're going to celebrate equality. But neighbor, the work isn't done yet. So last year on this day, I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia for Martin Luther King Day. I happened to be out there. I flew out that evening. And so I decided to go to the historical park for Dr. King in Atlanta, Georgia. It was an amazing time. This is just a photo of just me in front of Ebenezer Baptist Church, which Dr. King's grandfather founded, and his father ended up being a senior pastor over, and he made it clear that Martin Luther King was Jr. was the co-pastor, and Dr. King, he made that evident in his interviews. And this photo is just with some buddies of mine, actually from Washington State. They live in Savannah, Georgia now. You can see the Ebenezer Baptist Church. This is a historical photo of the church gathered in Atlanta. This is in front of Dr. King's house that he grew up in. He was born and raised in. And so it's amazing just to be with some friends of mine who are white, and being able to celebrate the cause and seeing just so much diversity just coming around that park during that time. Everyone coming together to seek justice. Everyone coming together to just be in unity with one another under the great causes that Dr. King fought for. This is a historical photo of the house that Dr. King was born and raised in. So when I posted these pictures to social media, a friend of mine who attended my church messaged me and said she had met Dr. King in 1964. This threw me back. I'm like, okay, I've seen interviews of people saying they knew Dr. King, but I never knew I knew somebody that met Dr. King. And she was a flight attendant at the time when Dr. King and his associate boarded the plane. She said something that was very interesting. She was a deer in headlights, but she shared that Dr. King didn't speak to her directly. He had a spokesman who did the speaking for him. And I was just thinking, like, okay, Dr. King, like he's painted as like the dream person to be, you know. So I was like, was he mean that day? Was he upset that day? What was going on? And I was just speculating on why Dr. King didn't speak. And I just kind of came to the conclusion that the weight of the nation was on his shoulders. And I firmly believe there are some people in life that has to process more than others. Just think about, how many of us heard the saying, it could be worse? I firmly believe there are people that have been dealt cards that are far more worse than ours, and they have to process in their silence. Think about the trauma, the fear, the busyness, the death threats, the oppression that Dr. King was facing. I think about our people in marginalized communities having to carry the weight of injustice, secondary trauma from national and global heinous acts against their identity. And on top of that, having to defend themselves and their dignity and why they should be treated in an equitable way. As a black man in America, I've experienced many injustices and racism that have traumatized me. I've been placed in the back of police cars. I've had police draw guns on me. It's a blessing that I'm here today. Yes. As a restorative practitioner, mediator, circle facilitator, I've seen the hopelessness many people in marginalized groups feel and experience with our systems in our country, especially those with criminal history. I used to facilitate circles with the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe and people coming back out of prison and jail and re-entering into society. And just being able to hear their stories, humanizing them, was a big deal. As the director of wellness for the Port Townsend School District, I have seen and intervened on behalf of students of color in our community who have experienced racism and inequity. And this happens to be my calling, to help transform systems and institutions to be equitable for all the people they serve. I am of the belief that it is the responsibility of everyone in this room today. This is going to be a theme, well, not a theme, but a quote that's going to be mentioned throughout this sermon. Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. Now, what does this mean for we? What is the common ground issue here? The common ground issue is, what is justice? What is justice? What is justice? The word is defined as behaving according to what is morally right and fair. But there's a key question missing. According to whom? Morally right and fair according to whom? It's crazy. I need to fix this mic. Hold on, y'all. I'm kind of getting into my groove, and it's like sliding off. So according to whom? Was this justice? When looking at justice, in looking at this picture, you can observe multiple dynamics. One group of people felt they were doing what was morally right and fair. The other group didn't. One group felt that they were, hey, these are the state laws. This is my privilege. You know, you don't deserve to be in here. They felt they were justified in what they were doing. Then you see Dr. King being arrested, fighting for his dignity, his God-given right, his right to possess the land and be on the land as the others. Which is why hundreds of black people were arrested on this day when they decided to protest segregation and inequality. Our Pledge of Allegiance says, liberty and justice for all. What does justice for all look like? Who defines justice? These are the questions that we have to grapple with. Who defines justice? What does this look like for all? Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, struggle. So we're going to transition to spiritual text, the Good Samaritan. In Dr. King's final sermon before he was assassinated the following day, he preached on the parable of the Good Samaritan. Not knowing that he was going to breathe his last breath the next day, he delivered a message of empathy, compassion, and conviction, because that was his purpose. Standing up for truth and justice, regardless of what tomorrow may bring. Today, we're going to visit that same passage that Dr. King spoke on the night before he was murdered. So, this is Jesus. He's talking to an expert in the law. He says, on one occasion, an expert of the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too a Levite. He came to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and he saw him and took pity on him. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert of the law said, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. And looking at this text, I mean, it's important to note, Jesus wasn't white. I think we can all come to that consensus, right? Jesus wasn't white. He wasn't white. It was a Renaissance period and everything, right? So in Dr. King's sermon, he speculated, why did the priest and the Levite walk on the other side of the road and not help the man? He said it was possible they were too busy. They had to get to a function, a church function, a meeting or something. Hey, I got places to be. It's possible they were afraid. Hey, is this guy faking it? Are they going to come get me? Are they trying to rob me? They could have been afraid. But the Samaritan had an outward mindset. He didn't ask himself, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? He asked himself, if I don't stop to help this man, what will happen to him? The Samaritan was just. And he thought about justice from the other man's perspective. Some of you may be retired. Let's imagine you're retired. You shop at the co-op. You're environmentally friendly. You attend the Mountain View pool. And one day you're walking downtown and you see a homeless black man, 6'4", stocky, distressed, dirty. Others walking past him, making no eye contact, acknowledging his existence or dignity. The man has been beat up by the game of life. Are you going to let your fear and stereotypes kick in? You have somewhere to be. This is a big guy. I don't want to get mugged. I saw on the news the other day a group of black men mugging another man. Or are you going to be courageous with your intrinsic values and look at that man in the eye and say, hello, and introduce yourself? He may ask for money. I can't help you with cash right now, but I could take you out for a meal, hear your story, put you in a hotel for the night, connect you with my fellowship so that you could be surrounded by a community of people. I heard of a couple agencies in the community. If you want, I can call them and connect them with you. How are you going to respond? There's also another way of looking at the story. Jesus was very clever with his parables. So let's exercise empathy and put ourselves in the position of the man who was beaten and left for dead. Imagine yourself in a powerless position. Who here has ever hit rock bottom? All right. Yeah, y'all know how it feels, right? Y'all know how it feels, being in the powerless position. Let's say you're in the position of the powerless man, and a black transgender female walks up, helps you out, takes you out to eat, puts you in a hotel, and connects you to the community, treats you with justice, someone who is an outcast from society. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. Let's talk about sacrifice. So I took some scriptures out of Romans 12. Sacrifice. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. The Samaritan put his own interests aside. He didn't make it about him. He didn't say, I don't have the time. He saw a man that was dishonored, hurt, and wanted to restore him. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Samaritan didn't ask questions in this story. He spent his own money to help the man in need, put the man on his donkey. Just imagine just picking the man up and trying to put him on a donkey, and paid his tab at the end. Suffering. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. The Samaritan suffered with the man who was suffering. He saw a man that was traumatized. He showed compassion. He soothed his wounds and bruises and the man had incurred from the robbery and the injuries. It kind of reminds me of just, sometimes I watch these natural disasters, like kind of just getting the documentaries behind them. Sometimes I watch that. And just thinking of like the people that, I watched one recently with where the volcano in, I think it was New Zealand, and the people that were there that were having to like help people with their bandages because they were burning so bad. That's suffering with someone who was suffering. And we look at the struggle. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Be willing to associate with the people of low position. Don't be conceited. The Samaritan in the story did not do this for his glory or fame. He did it for justice, what was morally right and fair. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. The Samaritan in this story is the peacemaker. He didn't look at the man and make assumptions, judgments, accusations, or assert his political beliefs. He spoke who he was with his actions. The temple assistant and priests were silent and unconcerned with the man's troubles. I think I missed a slide there. Dr. King said the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by good people. Sometimes we think silence solves things. It actually makes things worse. Causes more attention in relationships. The temple assistant and the Levite were silent and unconcerned with the man's woes. We have to think about justice from the other person's perspective. The religious leader came to Jesus with the question that was centered around check boxes. Love God with all your heart, check. Love God with all your mind, check. Love God with all your strength, check. Love your neighbor as yourself. He was an expert in the law. He had all of this knowledge. He asked Jesus questions he already knew the answer to, but his hesitancy was to identify who his neighbor was. We know that we all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up while love builds up. You have an expert in the law. He has all this knowledge, boosting his ego. He knows the law. That may relate to some of us here today. You know, we know history. Oh, I know my political position. You know, we have knowledge. Knowledge boosts our egos. Quite frankly, when that man was beaten up on the ground, he didn't care about your knowledge or wisdom. He cared about your love and your compassion, treating him with empathy. The man was wondering whether this person will treat me just. Will they do what is morally right and fair for me being in this vulnerable position, or will they keep walking? I noticed that the Good Samaritan didn't ask questions. He didn't ask, why were you on the ground? He didn't ask, why were you hanging out with the wrong crowd? He didn't ask, he didn't give unsolicited advice. He saw a man that was hurting and got straight to action. He saw that the man needed justice. He was beaten up, he was robbed, and he didn't try to justify who his neighbor was. Jesus gives us a clear picture of justice without questions and assumptions. He is clearly saying that it's not about you. It's about the other person, which is your neighbor. And I'm not going to pretend like this is easy. Justice is a very complex and difficult to navigate at times. There are going to be situations where seeing justice from another person's point of view will be challenging, especially if you were harmed. But as a human race, we should get into the habit of empathizing as best as we can with everyone. That's where I put it. I knew I put it somewhere. It was just in the wrong place. Where am I at right now? So, 3 points on justice. Justice may involve you, but it may not be about you. Justice can be inconvenient. It can challenge your assumptions and your beliefs. Justice evolves as humans and societies evolve. I know many of us in this room, we've raised a certain way, certain eras, right? Things aren't the same in like the day we were raised. And we're starting to see these issues of justice continue to come up because it evolves as societies evolve. There's many things that were culturally acceptable in the past that is clearly not acceptable today. So we have to evolve with justice. Now what are some things you can take away from this today? Just thinking, when I was writing this out, we have a BIPOC community here in Port Townsend. Did y'all know that? Okay, cool. Just making sure. I'm a part of a group chat with many of them. Many of them have expressed frustration with lip service, frustration with the community, frustration with our systems. And many of them have expressed they've experienced racism here in Port Townsend. Are you asking, what can I do? How can I help? This is your community too. What do you need? The first thing that we have to focus on is having an outward mindset. Jesus told the expert of the law to love his neighbor as himself. To do this requires an outward mindset. Sometimes we don't care about much of the issues that don't impact us. Oh, that doesn't impact me. That's not my community. We become cold. In the book, The Outward Mindset, the authors, Barrett and Kohler, explain that a person with an inward mindset sees others more like objects, like vehicles for use. For example, obstacles to blame or irrelevancies to ignore. From his point of view, others don't really matter like he matters. He is consumed with his own objectives, and the needs, objectives, and challenges don't really matter to him, of others don't really matter to him. His own objectives and behaviors become self-focused. In contrast, a person with an outward mindset sees other people as people. Seeing them as people, he realizes that others matter like himself matters. And because they do, their needs, their objectives, and challenges will matter to him as well. As a result, his objectives takes others into account. First thing, having an outward mindset. Second thing, practice justice. With an outward mindset, begin to think about justice from the other's point of view. Ask yourself, what is likely fair and morally right for that person? Ask that person directly, what is morally right and fair for you? Not only treat others how you want to be treated, treat others how they want to be treated. There will be some things that we can't solve and fix because our society is screwed up in a lot of ways. But we must take it upon ourselves to practice justice. As a restorative practitioner, I've been involved in restorative justice for a number of years now. I was introduced to it when I worked in the juvenile justice system. And restorative justice requires an outward mindset. Asking myself, what would happen to this person if this person isn't restored to community after harm had been done? Will this person be an outcast, written off, end up on the streets, and leave because this isn't a place for them? Viewing community activists as hypocrites. It requires me to think about justice from the other's point of view and not just through the letter of the law. To be restorative, you must believe that every person has dignity and is interconnected in this web of life. You have to believe that person's voice matters, and you have to be considerate of them. In practicing justice, be empathetic in how you interact with others, and try to view the community, systems, and institutions from their lens. Do this with humility, knowing that you're not the hero in the story. It's not about you. Do it from a place of genuine love and care. Quote from Aristotle: moral excellence comes about as of habit. as a result of habit. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, and brave by doing brave acts. Practice justice. The last thing, truly live. Let's talk about truly living. Jesus said, do this and you will live. Jesus tells the expert of the law to love God and his neighbor as himself and you will live. The context of the scripture was speaking of eternal life. This is comparable to what Aristotle said about the eudaimonia, or happiness / welfare, well-being, being the telos, the goal of being human. The word eudaimonia is translated as happiness or flourishing. To be a flourishing human being sounds better than to be happy because happiness is often associated with temporary feeling. However, when Aristotle used the word happiness, he wasn't referring to human pleasure. He is referring to rational thought and virtues of character. Let's love ourselves. When I read the scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, I don't think of the golden rule, treat others how I want to be treated. In reality, others may not like to be treated how I would like to be treated. We all have different tolerances, and not everyone has empathy. I look at it as truly loving myself. When I love myself, I'm going to do just acts. When I love myself, I'm going to do what's meaningful for my soul. When I love myself, I'm going to do what is meaningful for my growth and development. When I love myself, I'm not going to self-destruct. When I love myself, I'm going to love my neighbor. And when I love my neighbor, I live generously, which satisfies my soul and well-being. Let's flourish. Where's these slides at? I feel like, all right. Dr. King said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. He said our lives begin to end. That's not flourishing. So as we wrap up, us, vision. When does justice prevail? How is justice achieved? After the March on Washington, Dr. King was asked, what's next? The hundreds of thousands who marched in Washington marched to level barriers. They summed up everything in a word, now. What is the content of now? Everything, not some things. What's in the president's civil rights bill is a part of now. Justice is achieved when we act now. And when we do this, our vision and principles become more than just a plaque on the wall. I think I messed it up. All right, here we go. Our vision and principles become more than just a plaque on the wall that we walk past every day, not acknowledging, not breathing throughout the fellowship or breathing throughout our daily actions. And your covenant statement, it says, we are travelers. We meet for a moment in this sacred place to love, to share, to serve. Let us use compassion, curiosity, reverence, and respect while seeking our truths. In this way, we will support a just and joyful community, and this moment shall endure. This is what you all believe. Don't let it just become a plaque on the wall. In your mission statement, we come together to seek our truths, honor our diversity, serve with love, and work for justice in the world, in our world. See justice from the other person's point of view. Have an outward mindset. Let's not be self-centered when it comes to justice. Let's have an outward mindset. Let's practice justice, and let's live life to the fullest. Thank you all for your time. This is a last quote from Martin Luther King. The time is always right to do what is right. Thank you all.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. In that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. Go with me to that land. Oh, let me sing it in that land. They'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. They'll be singing in that Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. To that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound.
Before I close, I want to let people know that there will be, that our Healthy Community team will be having a conversation circle after the service, but instead of in the den, it will be right up here. So help yourself to tea and coffee, and then, we're not supposed to have tea and coffee in here, but I think we'll break that rule today. Just don't spill. So it's time for us to extinguish our flame. And there are our words. We extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the power of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts. Next week, our QUF members, Lori Riley and John Collins, will be speaking on the topic of disability and ableism. We hope you can join us either in the sanctuary or online. Our postlude today is a classic recording of a song called "O Day," sung by Bessie Jones.
Yonder come David,